In this lesson, we'll focus on the first step in the opportunity validation process, conducting a manager briefing. A manager briefing is a meeting with your manager in which you can gather information about the project you've just been assigned and align on the expectations of that work. We'll use the three components of a feature opportunity: strategic fit, user value, and business value to guide the discussion. To help you conduct this conversation and gather the necessary information to validate the opportunity, we've created a manager briefing template. It can be valuable to send the blank template to your manager in advance of your briefing and tell them that you'd like to walk through these questions together in the live discussion. We've also filled out the template with an example from Lyft. We'll walk through that example in this lesson. Now let's dive into the three parts of the manager briefing template, starting with strategic fit. Your organization has a mission and vision for why it exists. These should translate into a strategy that gets more specific as it ladders down from your company to your function and your team. It's important for new PMs to understand this context when they first start at a company. This helps them see how their individual projects tie into the company mission, vision, and overall product and team goals. It also allows you to communicate why the project is important to other core team members, i.e. your engineering and design counterparts, because this helps ensure they understand why your project should be prioritized. Additionally, this helps avoid the project manager trap. If your team is invested in the strategic importance of the project, it's less likely you'll need to spend valuable time following up on their individual tasks and specific objectives. They'll be motivated to accomplish the work on their own, so you can spend your time on product work. The strategic fit of a project can be evaluated at 4 different levels: company mission and vision, company strategy, product strategy, and team goals. Let's define each of these. The company mission and vision summarize the reason why your company exists. These should capture what your company is trying to accomplish in the long term. Usually they're related to creating value for the user by delivering a solution that improves their experience in a meaningful way. In contrast, the company's strategy includes the things that your company is trying to achieve in the short to medium term. The product strategy encompasses specific goals to the product that will help advance the company strategy. The product strategy may be the primary component of the company strategy if the company is product-led. That means the product is the most important piece of the company. However, this is not always the case. Companies can be distribution-led, marketing-led, or sales-led, depending on what they prioritize. Finally, the team's goals should tie back to the product strategy and overall company strategy. Your project should directly support one or more of your team's goals, and you should be able to understand the degree of impact your project will have on those specific goals. We can start to apply the feature opportunity validation framework to a real feature opportunity investigated at Lyft a few years ago. A PM on the driver experience team was interested in evaluating an opportunity to improve a driver's end-of-session experience as they tried to get back to their original destination. This PM started by grounding the opportunity in the 4 levels of strategic fit. Lyft's mission is to improve people's lives with the world's best transportation. The company's vision is to change the way the world works, ride by ride. Lyft envisions a world where cities feel small again, and where transportation and tech bring people together instead of apart. To directly support that mission and vision in the near term, the company's strategy focuses on providing drivers with flexible earning opportunities and offering riders faster and more affordable alternatives to personal vehicle use while saving them time and money. Lyft is a product-led company, so the product strategy directly overlaps with the company strategy. The most relevant piece for this particular opportunity is the driver strategy, to empower drivers with flexible earning opportunities that work for them. And finally, the driver experience team's goal was to help drivers get more value out of the Lyft app and improve their experience using it. It's not uncommon to be missing one of these steps, even after conducting the manager briefing. For example, your company may not have a clearly articulated product strategy yet. However, your job is to ask and make sure you get as much as you can during the manager briefing. Continue to work with your manager over the course of the project to understand how your project ladders up to the company's objectives as things evolve. The next step is to evaluate user value. This part of the manager briefing allows you to understand the hypotheses the leadership team and your manager have already made about the user and their problem. There are 4 questions that make up a holistic user hypothesis. Who is the user? What problem are we trying to solve for them? Why is that problem important to the user? What does success look like for the user, and how will we measure it? Let's walk through each of these in more depth. First, who is the user? This is an initial hypothesis of who your target user is. You can think of this in 2 categories: demographics or firmographics and product behaviors. We'll use demographics to identify our customers in a B2C setting and firmographics in a B2B setting. Demographics can include things like age, gender, ethnicity, income, level of education, occupation, and family structure. Firmographics can include industry, location, annual revenue, company size, company type, or employee/executive title. And product behaviors include things such as freemium versus paid users, desktop versus mobile users, or users versus non-users. The second question regarding user value is, what is the problem we're trying to solve for them? There are 2 things to evaluate when articulating the user problem. First, the problem area. This is where the challenge occurs for the user of the product. Some key problem areas you can evaluate include a specific job to be done, cost, accessibility, performance, and integration. The second thing to evaluate is the signal. For every problem, you need concrete evidence that shows this might be true. For example, there may be in-product signals or user quotes regarding the issue. The next question to ask is, why is that problem important to the user? The importance of a problem can be measured in 3 ways. The first is severity. That means, what are the pain points the user has due to the current problem? How painful are they? You can use a simple scale of low, medium, or high. The second measure of importance is the number of users impacted by the problem. This can be an exact number or a relative measure of how large the group is compared to your full user base. And the third measure of importance is alternatives. What alternatives or workarounds are users employing to solve the problem today? How do these alternatives solve the problem for them? Where do they fall short? Finally, ask, what does success look like for the user? How will we measure it? Success can be measured both qualitatively and quantitatively. Qualitative success describes improvement from the lens of the user. How will the user's experience improve if you solve their problem? Quantitative success uses company metrics such as adoption or sentiment ratings to determine the success of the project. A crucial but often overlooked step of defining success is articulating non-goals. Since no solution can solve every problem, it's also important to articulate the problems that you are not trying to solve for your users. Let's start building out our user value hypotheses for Lyft, beginning with the first question: who is the user? The target user for this driver experience opportunity is drivers, but the team specifically wanted to focus on part-time drivers who live in rural and suburban areas and commute into busier areas to drive for Lyft. The team believed that these particular drivers experienced end-of-session challenges most frequently and found them the most painful. The problem area is a specific job to be done: drivers getting back to their desired destination at the end of a driving session. At the time, drivers, especially those that lived in less busy areas, often struggled to pick up a rider who was headed in a similar direction to them. What's more, drivers couldn't see the rider's destination until after they had arrived at the pickup spot, at which point they might discover that the rider is not going in the same direction as they are. The signal that first prompted the driver experience PM to look into this opportunity was high cancellation rates for end-of-session rides. A high cancellation rate indicated that drivers weren't satisfied with the rides they were getting and that there may be room to improve this part of the experience. Next, the Lyft PM had to determine why this problem was important by estimating the severity, number of users impacted, and effectiveness of alternatives. The PM rated the severity of the problem as high because cancellations are a big pain point for both passengers and drivers. For passengers, these late cancellations created an extremely frustrating and time-consuming rider experience. For drivers, the experience was frustrating and costly, since they had to waste time and gas getting to the pickup spot only to cancel the ride, earning no income along the way. The users impacted were all drivers who live in rural and suburban areas and commuted into urban areas to drive for Lyft. At the time, these drivers made up about 75% of Lyft's driver population. The alternatives they had at the time were simply to turn off the app and drive home without earning any income, or continue canceling until they found a rider going in the same direction as them. Neither of these options was an ideal alternative that supported the team's goal of helping drivers get more value out of Lyft. Finally, the Lyft PM hypothesized the qualitative and quantitative impact of solving this problem for drivers. Qualitatively, a successful feature would enable drivers to more easily find and get paired with rides to their destination, improving their end-of-session experience. Quantitatively, the PM would want to see this show up in lower cancellation rates, as well as higher driver earnings and supply. In other words, more driver hours spent online. One key area that the PM was not prioritizing at this time was allowing drivers to create route preferences beyond commuting to their final destination. Doing so would have expanded the scope of the project and the time required to complete it. While route preferences were a potentially interesting area to explore later, the focus of this project was to ship a solution that addressed the end-of-session pain point. Putting all of this together, we now have a hypothesis for how this opportunity will deliver value to Lyft's drivers. Now let's move to the third part of the manager briefing, understanding the business value hypothesis. There are 3 questions we need to answer to build our business value hypothesis. Which key stakeholders contribute to business value, and what are their alignment needs? What does success look like for the business, and how will it be measured? And how does success for this project tie to the team goals, product goals, and broader strategies of the company? The first question to answer is, which key stakeholders contribute to business value, and what are their alignment needs? Stakeholders include decision makers, such as your product leadership team, executives, and founders. The business value delivered through your project must align with their expectations. But beyond these decision makers, there are other functions that support the delivery of business value, such as customer service, sales, or marketing. These teams need to be informed of the feature's progress and outcomes so that they can support the project and the business value it delivers. Next, you need to answer, what does success look like for the business? Again, you'll want to estimate this both qualitatively and quantitatively. Qualitatively, you can describe the improvement you want to make to the business. For quantitative success, make sure to choose appropriate metrics to measure the improvement. Common quantitative metrics include revenue, retention, and activation. It's also important to articulate non-goals. For business value, non-goals are metrics that the leadership team should avoid using to measure the success of the project. Your project might deliver value against these metrics as a byproduct or set foundations to do so in the future. However, the project should not be expected to deliver value against these metrics to be successful. Finally, how does the success of this project tie to the team goals, product goals, and broader strategies of the company? After defining what business value success looks like both qualitatively and quantitatively, it's important to ensure this aligns with the 4 strategic fit elements we discussed earlier in this lesson. Let's answer these 3 questions for the Lyft driver experience opportunity. Key decision makers were product leadership as well as the driver and matching teams. These were the stakeholders that needed to be fully aligned with the feature's business value before development could begin. They were also critical to keep in the loop if the business value hypothesis changed at any point in development. The informed group included customer service, marketing, and the Lyft community team. While these teams didn't necessarily need to sign off on the business value hypothesis before development began, it would be critical for them to understand what the feature aimed to accomplish so they could support driver awareness, adoption, and engagement with the feature once it was launched. The driver experience team's qualitative business goal was similar to the qualitative user goal: improve the driver experience. To define quantitative business goals, the team considered how improving the driver's end-of-session experience might positively impact the business. Minimizing empty return trips, and therefore increasing driver earnings, was known to improve driver retention, So this was one metric the team hoped to impact. Cancellation rate was another business metric that the team believed would be significantly impacted by this opportunity because it was the primary alternative that drivers had at the time to address this problem. A non-goal that the team agreed upon was directly driving revenue, primarily because measuring the impact on revenue would be difficult, especially for a moderate supply-side initiative like this one. Instead, the team would track the impact on cancellation rate, an input to revenue that was more easily measurable and trackable by the team. Lastly, it was clear that the business value impact laddered up directly to company strategy, mission, and values. Improving drivers' ability to earn income on their way home directly served product and company goals around empowering drivers with flexible earning opportunities, which then laddered up to Lyft's vision of using tech and transportation to bring people together. That wraps up the manager briefing for Lyft's new driver experience feature opportunity. We'll continue refining this Lyft opportunity in the Refining Business Value section. As a reminder, your manager may not have all the answers to these questions, and that's okay. Get as much information as you can during the manager briefing. Your next job is to refine this information and answer some of those unknowns. We've now used the feature opportunity framework to run a manager briefing and define user value and business value hypotheses. You can add your own hypotheses to the manager briefing template. We'll refine these user value and business value hypotheses in the next two sections.